Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we are at Lowe's. I'm at Lowe's with my mom and we are getting wood to make a wedding sign. Okay, so once you're in Lowe's or Home Depot, they both have trim aisles that have smaller boards and smaller like trim pieces, which are actually what I use for my signs instead of the main lumber aisle, because you get a lot of thinner pieces of wood, so it's less weight to hang on the wall. Here are the big boards and here are the little thin boards that I was talking about. So you can see that these are like a lot thinner to make the sign with, and they'll be a lot lighter weight if you want to hang it on your wall. Really now, I don't have a particular one that, there's like lots of different kinds of wood you can use, and I really just kind of make them based on how much of a focal point I want the sign to be, because this wood is, which are these? These are the poplar boards, and they're so much cheaper, but they're also uglier. When you stain them, they don't have as much grain as like the maple or oak. When you're picking out your boards, you want to try to avoid them being super warped. Like this one, it might look like it has a relatively minor curve, but when you actually go to screw it down to the frame, because it's so thin, it ends up causing problems. Like that board has a pretty good warp in it. We want to try to go for ones that are a lot, this is a very straight board. We should try to go for straight boards. So take a look at them, see which grain you like the best. I think I'm going to go with the oak project boards on this one, just because I really want some pretty grain and texture in them. So yeah. What I do next is I always lay my boards out to try to figure out how many I want for this project. I usually like to do pretty much a golden ratio with them, or like a flag ratio, but I think this is a pretty good example. I think I'm gonna go with the 4 oak boards and then cut it off part way. I'll show you what I do next at home. Okay, so we have got our 4 boards, which are gonna make up that main front portion of the sign where all the writing is gonna go. Next we need the trim pieces that I use to make the frame of the sign and kind of what you hang it on, and just give it some added stability. So let's go find some trim. Usually trim pieces are like 1 aisle over from the thin boards that you'll find. Usually when you start seeing like table legs and all that, you know the trim is near. So this is what I mean by trim pieces. When you see all these little small pieces, for this one, I usually stick right in this section. So one of these 4 squares. To me, this is too thin, because you want to be able to not only create a frame, but also be able to hang the sign from this, and they get a little heavy. So I think for this one, because it's a slightly bigger sign, sorry, my focus is totally off. Because this one's a bigger sign, I'm gonna go with these, and they are the 1/2 inch by 36 inch poplar squares. So I'm gonna grab probably 5 of those. I'll show you what I'm gonna do with those in a minute. So I'm opting to go with 5 of these 1/2 inch by 36 inch poplar square trim pieces, because as you can see, we're gonna make our outside rectangular frame for the sign, and then I always like to run one big one down the middle, because that'll give us some extra stabilization and support to attach those front boards to. So let's grab them and go. Okay, you guys, so I have my trim pieces, I have my boards. I'm gonna go find my mom, who came to Lowe's with me because I'm home, and then we'll get going. We'll go make a sign. Hey guys, so I am home and I'm gonna start building the wedding sign. So let's get started. Okay guys, I have finished all of the nailing. As you can see, I put nails up that center line, nails along all of the edges, and then our back looks like this. So it's reinforced and it allows you to hang it on 2 nails on your wall. So now let's go get to staining. Okay guys, I finished making the sign, so now it's time to stain it. For this one, I really wanted to have kind of a farmhousey look to it. So I opted to go with English chestnut. It's a nice minwax color, and it's not too warm. A lot of the like mahogany tones end up being too warm. So if you've never done this before, you just get your little minwax stain cans in the paint aisle at Lowe's or Home Depot. They're always around paint. And then you take the lid off like you would a paint can with a screwdriver. And then you always want to stir it up because the pigment will settle to the bottom of the can. I personally use rags usually when I'm staining. You can totally use those little foam, like the black foam brushes. Those work super well. Either way, I don't entirely have a preference on what you use, but I do tend to like the rags because it gives me a better feel for what I'm doing. It does get you a lot dirtier. So whether it is the black paint brushes or rag, go for whatever you feel most comfortable with. And then this is just an old t-shirt. So we're gonna rub the stain on the board. And it's not a thing of excess. You put very, very little stain on. You don't want, you know, you don't want it to really even look wet as you're putting it on. Definitely want to even it out because the way it sits is the way it's going to soak in and stain the wood. Sometimes if you have a lot of crevices in your signs, one thing I like to do, just a little tip, is if you really want it to look kind of rustic, I will put those tiny nails in between my boards to space them evenly. So I'll set a nail upright to get the spacing, and then obviously I'll take it out. So I didn't nail it in the board, but I literally set it in between the 2 boards to get them spaced out a little bit, and it gives it a really rustic farmhouse look. But when you do that, it creates these little gaps in between your boards, and then your boards are really hard to stain because you have, you know, the dark outside edge and then you have the really light kind of in between. So a trick for that is if you actually take your stain cloth and you put a screwdriver in your stain cloth like this, you can kind of jam the screwdriver head down in that little crevice, and it allows you to darken the little creases in between your boards really nicely, if that were to be an issue. But if you guys have any other issues in this process, be sure to, I'm gonna link a blog post about it with all of my equipment and kind of step-by-step instructions on how to build these signs on my blog, thefullbucket.com. But if you guys have questions, just leave it in the comments below for me, and I'll be more than happy to try to answer whatever questions you guys have. Or you can go on the blog and leave me a question there. Okay guys, so here we are. I'm finished staining the sign. It looks like this. It looks like we got a piece with a really dark spot right there, but That is from the actual grain of the wood, not the stain. So here's our sign. We're gonna go paint it in our next video. So thanks for joining me. If you wanna see more wedding DIY videos, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks so much, bye.